right, so we talked about the cause of World War One. Now we're going to talk about the technological advances that occurred. We're going to talk about the warfare. How did they fight World War One? So the first word in here is stalemate. We see that first part, something that is stale, it is old. Okay, it's a situation in which further action or progress by opposing or competing parties seems impossible, a deadlock. No one is winning, no one is losing. This word is extremely, extremely important, as well as this word is extremely, extremely important. So trench warfare, it's the type of combat in which the opposing sides attack, counterattack, and defend from relatively permanent systems of trenches dug into the ground. So the trench is actually something that is dug into the ground and they're hiding in it. So this is only occurring during World War One. When you have a trench, so here is your ground, you are digging in here, and then you as a person are in the ground. You are waiting to be called to go up and out of the trench to then fight. Mustard gas, again, only something that we're dealing with in World War One. It's a chemical weapon that causes blistering, attacks the eyes, as well as the lungs, okay? It gets the term mustard gas from the color. And then rationing, controlled distribution of a scarce resource, goods, or servicing. When you see that word ration or rationing, you should be thinking about scarcity as one of our enduring issues. It's going to be a lack of something because they're taking pieces out of the society to get put back to the army. So trench warfare. With this particular photograph here, we're looking at the purpose of this photograph. So when we think about purpose, we're thinking about why. Why was this photograph here? So this is what the trenches look like. And if you take a look, you've got 1, you have 2, 3, 4, and then finally 5 guys that are very visible on this picture. So why do you think this photograph was put out there to talk about trench warfare? What was the purpose of it? All right, so let's take a look at what's happening here. So World War One starts in a region known as the Balkans, okay, and they call it the powder keg of Europe. When we talk about powder keg, we're talking about gunpowder. And with that, it's the idea that it's explosive. Now, the Balkan regions primarily is this region of Serbia, okay? Serbia wants to control the region of Bosnia in Austria-Hungary. So this little section of our map, it's part of Austria-Hungary, but Serbia wants to control it. In order to make sure that they have access to it, a Serbian nationalist, remember someone who loves their country, okay, he assassinates the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Austria-Hungary then, with their support of their ally Germany, declares war on Serbia. So Serbia kills the Archduke of Austria before Austria-Hungary decides they're going to actually go through after giving Serbia multiple times to actually say they're sorry. When they refuse, they first go to Germany and they're like, if we declare war, do you have our back? Germany agrees. Serbia then turns around and looks to their ally Russia to get support. Germany declares war on Russia. So Russia, in order before they declare war on Germany, makes sure that their buddy France is in an alliance. What Germany decides to do is then invade France. And when they invade France, they go through the country of Belgium. Belgium's ally, Great Britain, then declares war on Germany. So all of this, what we need to keep in mind is it's a very dramatic back and forth. Friends bring in friends who bring in friends, and then Belgium just kind of got elbowed in the middle of the fight without really knowing what had happened. Britain jumps in because they're going to back up Belgium. Ultimately, all of this leads to the war. So you have the Allied powers, which are Great Britain, Russia, and France, also known as the Triple Entente. And then you have the Central Powers, Austria-Hungary, Germany, and the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire is going to eventually fall and become Turkey. So that's why on the map you see Turkey. But what ends up happening again, you have Serbia right here. They assassinate Austria-Hungary. Before Austria-Hungary goes in and decides that they're going to actually invade Serbia, they make sure that Germany is going to back them up. Serbia gets support from Russia. Russia is going to help Serbia. Okay? Germany then decides they're going to declare war on Russia. Russia goes to France to get help. Germany invades France, but goes through this country of Belgium. So instead of using the border that actually existed, they went through Belgium so that they could invade France. In invading Belgium, the United Kingdom comes in to help Belgium. So the actual fighting themselves. So in World War I, soldiers dug themselves into trenches that were protected by barbed wire and machine guns. The trenches are extremely important to understand that trench warfare really only happens with World War I. Some of the new weapons that included are machine guns, poison gas, tanks, and airplanes. Okay. The trenches is what's actually going to cause the stalemate because once they dig into these sides, neither side is going to back off. To kind of break down a few of those pieces, the tanks and airplanes. Tanks help troops move forward because they tear through the barbed wire defenses and they go over the trenches. They could actually like roll themselves right over it. And then the planes were first used to spy, but eventually they started with artillery and dropping bombs. Machine guns, this is extremely important. All right. Machine guns is going to make sure that they can fire 600 bullets a minute. They don't need to aim. They can just fire, 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 fire. Okay. They can also fire explosive shells up to 25 miles. So what we're starting to notice with this is this idea that the machine guns are actually what's going to cause tons of death. Not to be out by machine guns, you have poison gas. So in this poison gas, basically what ended up happening is the gas would come down, it would go into the trench, and what would happen is the troops would get out of their trench because it had settled in there. The troops would then get out. So here's our war, here's our trench. It fills up in here. So he goes to jump out. And he's like, oh my God, I need to be safe. And then machine gun fire, and he's dead. And so eventually it just became a war of dropping things into trenches, shooting each other with machine guns, and this is what continues to increase the stalemate. Now, the area between the trenches was known as no man's land. Okay, it was covered with barbed wire, landmines, and wounded soldiers. So if you went out to no man's land, it literally just was the flat field. So again, we have our picture of our trench. This is no man's land. All right, here's our guy safe in our trench. And he does not want to get into no man's land, but he would have to cross no man's land in order to get to the other side, in order to attack. Shell shock is a term that was coined by soldiers. All right, they include fatigue, tremor, confusion, and nightmares. We would now diagnose it as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But what happened was because it was, a constant fighting, constant war, there was just constant barrage. There was always explosions, and people didn't know what to do with that. Two of the other major issues that came with trench warfare was trench foot. We get the name because of the trench warfare. And basically it results from your feet being wet for too long. So once you got in the trench, I'm just drawing this man way too much. So once we got into the trench, if it started raining, the water would get up and their feet would get wet and their feet would never dry, which basically caused their feet to look like this. The skin would just dissolve off their feet. And they killed about 80,000 soldiers just from trench foot. Now, the trench foot itself didn't kill them, it's the infection you get from the trench foot. Gas attacks, specifically mustard gas. It blistered the skin, eyes, and lungs and killed thousands. And it was heavier in the air and sunk into the trenches, which caused them to leave the trenches. So again, our guy in the trench gun, he would get out and then he'd get shot with machine gun fire. And this is just to give you, if it loads on your, there you go. This is just to give you a little bit more of that idea of trench foot.